All right. Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about estuaries, which is the next part of our, it's the next thing we're going to talk about after watersheds. So today's warm-up is, what is a watershed? So for this question, I want you to use your own words and your own thoughts, and I want you to avoid using Google. I really want to know what you know. So yeah, just make sure you avoid using Google. This is not, what was I going to say? Oh, it's okay if you're wrong for this warm-up. I just want your best guess because I just want to know what you remember from last week. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and take some time to do the warm-up. And then when you're done, we'll move forward. All right, so today's agenda, we just did the warm-up, which was defining watersheds. Next, we're going to review watersheds. Then we will recap this week's asynchronous work, and by this week I mean last week. Then we'll watch a video about estuaries, and finally we'll do our exit slope. So let's quickly review watersheds. So from the warm-up, we've learned, well, this is the answer to the warm-up, but we've learned that a watershed is the area of land where precipitation runs off into larger bodies of water. And we saw an example of how this works with our watershed model made of crumpled paper. So if we look here, this is our watershed. This is a model of a watershed. So everything within the dotted line, that's all the land where precipitation is going to run off into a larger body of water. So what I mean by that is if it rains inside the dotted line, all that water is going to go to one place. And then this is the demonstration that Ms. Chowdhury was kind enough to make for us. She used crumpled paper, blue water, and an aluminum tray to show us how precipitation moves through a watershed. And then we also talked about Beargrass Creek. So we watched a video about the unhealthy conditions of Beargrass Creek and its watershed right here in Louisville. So remember, Beargrass Creek used to be pretty clean, but then it got very, very dirty because of all the runoff pollution that goes into the watershed. And great. So I wanted to really quickly review our asynchronous work from last Wednesday. For that asynchronous work, I told you a bit of a story. There's a town that is experiencing a ton of runoff pollution. And so the waterways are now very dirty, the fish are dying, citizens are in uproar, and the city has put forth 3 proposals for reducing the amount of runoff that goes into the waterways. And these are the 3 proposals. I wanted to know which one you think is best. And then also, what are some of the disadvantages of that? And the reason we're doing that is because all 3 of these proposals are actual things that actual cities do in order to reduce their runoff. So I'm going to quickly take you through these 3 proposals and introduce a little bit of vocabulary for them. So the first proposal, which is digging up parking lots and concrete sidewalks and planting grass in that land instead, so that water can absorb into the ground. So sidewalks and parking lots are examples of impervious surfaces, which are surfaces that water cannot soak into. Impervious means you can't get past it. Nothing can get past it. Like all of these, this sidewalk, this road, those are all impervious surfaces. Nothing can get through this rock. Basically, it's just rock. But if we dig up part of the sidewalk and dig up parking lots and replace it with grass, or replace it with for parking lots, if you replace it with bricks that have big holes in the middle, then water can get through into the ground. And if water gets into the ground, there won't be any runoff. So that's proposal number 1. Proposal number 2 is planting trees along the sides of parks, rivers, and roads. to slow down the runoff and give it more time to absorb into the ground. So this is something that farmers already do. A lot of farmers, either intentionally or passively, they have trees that line the river. So maybe the farmer planted them, or maybe the farmer just didn't, the farmer's not farming this land, so it's okay if it has trees on it. But what the trees do is they slow down the amount of runoff that can go into the river. So they slow down all this runoff water and give it more time to soak into the ground. These trees can also catch some big pieces of runoff before it could go into the river. So if there's a really big piece of garbage, when it tries to flow past the trees might stop it. And this kind of trees that line the river, those are called riparian buffers, or just buffers. Riparian, I always forget what that means, but it means the land closest to the river. So the trees just form a buffer. And so we could build buffers along the sides of parks, rivers, and roads. And then proposal number 3 is building giant underground storage tanks for rainwater. So as it rains, the storage tanks can store some of the water, and after the storm is over, the storage tanks can slowly filter the water and dump it into the nearest river. So this thing is huge. As you can see, that's a person, and these storage tanks are absolutely massive. And so this just holds all that extra rainwater from like the sewers until the storm is over, and then it'll slowly filter the water and dump it into the nearest river. So this basically takes all that runoff and then cleans it kind of slowly. But that can be an effective way to reduce the amount of runoff. It's also very expensive. These things require a lot of underground space and a lot of concrete. And I bet they're expensive to operate too. All right, so those are the 3 proposals that we talked about in our asynchronous work for last Wednesday. And that's enough recap. So let's move on to estuaries. So as we saw in the warm-up, so we know when it rains here, the precipitation goes onto the land, so precipitation falls on the watershed, and all of that water that lands on the watershed is going to go to one basin. Sometimes, though, that basin could lead to another river. So this watershed could be part of a bigger watershed, and this basin might eventually lead to a river that eventually leads to the ocean. What happens when the fresh water from this basin ends up in the ocean or meets salt water? That's where we have estuaries. So estuaries are where that fresh water meets the salt water, and they mix. So we're going to watch a short video about estuaries, and as we watch this video, you're going to do a worksheet, and it's called Lesson 8 Video Notes. And let me read the questions to you. Oops, oh, no. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to open up this video notes, and you're going to answer these questions as you watch the video. So number 1 is, what is an estuary? Number 2, what are some of the characteristics of an estuary? Number 3, give 2 reasons why estuaries are so important to wildlife. Number 4, how are estuaries beneficial to the economy? Number 5, why are estuaries important for humans aside from their economic value? And number 6, why is it important to protect estuaries? So go ahead and fill this out as you watch the video. Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot to introduce this video. So this video is, it's called What's an Estuary? Now You Know. And it was made by the Environmental Protection Agency in, I think, 2013. So this will show us what an estuary is. All right, so make sure that you've answered the questions on the worksheet. And lastly, let's move on to our exit slip. So if you need to pause here and continue working on the worksheet, please do that. But otherwise, we'll do the exit slip, which is to look at this map of Mobile Bay. So Mobile Bay, this is Mobile Bay up here on this the little map. I forgot what it's called. But if you look at this little map, we can see that Mobile Bay is in Alabama. So it's sort of on the coast of Alabama and the Gulf of Mexico. So using what you know about estuaries, I want you to fill out the Google Form worksheet about Mobile Bay. And if we take a look at so if we look at the exit slip, it has 7 questions. So question 1A, is Mobile Bay, Alabama located on a coast? If your answer is yes, what large body of water is that coast on? Two, what is the evidence that fresh water enters Mobile Bay? So I forgot to tell you, but up here you can see lots of rivers. So these rivers are carrying fresh water. And the Gulf of Mexico is down here. The Gulf of Mexico carries salt water into here. So 3, what is the evidence that salt water is entering the bay? So looking at the map, where's the salt water coming from? 4A, do you think Mobile Bay is an estuary? Yes, no, or maybe. And then 4B, defend your answer with facts about estuaries. So what is your reasoning for your answer for number 4A? And then 5, the challenge question. Now examine the shoreline inside Mobile Bay and see if you can find another smaller estuary. Name the estuary and describe the features you think makes it an estuary. So somewhere on this map, there is a smaller estuary. Where is it? What is it called? And how do you know it's an estuary? All right, so that is all for estuaries today. If you have any questions about anything you've seen in this video, please leave me a comment on Google Classroom or come to office hours and we can talk about it. All right? Cool. So, bye guys.